Welcome to the Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm Dave Brown. I'm here today with Tyler Leber, who succeeded with his own startup company and also is focused on outsourcing because that's what his company does. So we'll talk about that a bit. And Tyler, can you explain to us kind of your experience at BYU and how you got into entrepreneurship?
It's been a few years since I've graduated. I graduated in economics, had a minor in business management, and like I said, it's been a few years now, but we started a company while we were still at BYU, kind of junior senior year. We ended up selling that company and started Coconut about 3 years ago.
Were you always planning, did you study econ knowing you would be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so for me, I really just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, post graduation, and so economics, it felt like a good starting point for a lot of different careers that interested me at least. I know I've always been, I don't know, more not creative at all, not graphic design, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And I like finance, I like business management, all of that, and I felt like economics was a good like in between, good foundation to go off of for a bunch of different career paths. And so, no, I didn't start knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I more sought that out, I really like junior, senior year.
Okay. And what would plan A be? Like if you had gone kind of a more traditional get a job route, what might you have done?
Yeah. So for me, I was doing a lot of testing. And so, I did a bunch of different internships, but then I also worked I was also interviewing at startups around that, kind of junior, senior time frame. And so, yeah, for me, like plan A was to get a job. I was going to start out as a financial advisor at Vanguard, and I had an offer and everything. But then I had been working for this startup venture validator for a little while, and I actually decided to go with that full time. I figured if there was a time to take a risk and see, how entrepreneurship worked for me, that was the time to do it before, having kids or having a lot of expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. The least risky time, right?
Right.
And I've heard you talk on another podcast about finding the right business partner. So you interviewed and went to work for Venture Validator, I think.
Yep.
Did you know your partner there beforehand, or was that how you met?
No, yeah, that was how we met. I'd done a few interviews with a few, BYU founders. They were going to college or just graduated, and they had their own, startup trying to get funding or had just gotten funding. And there was the one guy, his name's Eric Espinosa. He's also a BYU alum. Interviewed with him, and we clicked very, very quickly. We complemented each other in a lot of ways. I'd say more of a visionary mindset where he's got a lot of big, amazing ideas. And then I'm more of the steady, behind the scenes, just doing things in the background. And so we really hit it off and started working right away and worked really well together. And so for me, it was a very easy decision.
Okay. And for the kind of steady behind the scenes work, what is that? Like what types of things do you focus on?
So mainly like systems operations, but then also a little bit of the finance. I'm not, not a finance major, or graduate, I guess. But for the basic budgeting and forecasting of the company, I've always taken that on. But yeah, mainly systems, which means, automation, delegation, and also just managing our software stack. So I should count it sometime, but we probably have 40 or 50 different softwares that we use for a huge variety of purposes. Right now, obviously, we're a bigger company than we used to be, Venture Validator, but we manage a huge amount of softwares, and all of those have to integrate together, and a lot of those require automations, and so managing that is definitely a full-time job.
Okay, and so you said Eric kind of complements that. He's more visionary type, or you see him that way. So what is that type of work like? Like, what does he do?
Yeah, definitely. So, especially in the early venture validator days, and then also the early Coconut days, it was a lot of like customer discovery, I would say, and also just trying to feel out the direction of the company. So, venture validator, for example, we were doing a lot of market research reports, but then also Coconut, we do a lot of staffing, so long-term staffing, right? But at the very beginning days, we didn't know that was the direction that we wanted to go. We had all of these different options available to us, and we were trying to figure out which one would be the most profitable and which one would also make customers the happiest. So his job was definitely to, do customer surveys, talk to people, deliver, reports back in Venture Validator, or deliver a placement in Coconut, and then figure out like, hey, is this kind of what you were looking for? What else could we do to be a better company? And so he really kind of set the foundation in each company of, this is our pricing, this is the direction that we want to go as a company. This is the offering that we want to give. A lot of those like foundational elements that we then kind of take off and systematize and automate.
Okay. So, and venture validator, so I can see how that's complementary. Venture validator, did you sell off or what
Yeah.
happened to the first company? Yeah.
Yep. So we ended up selling. We built that for about 2 or 3 years, and then we ended up selling that. Neither of us are sales or marketing guys, so luckily now in Coconut we actually have a co-founder that is much more of a marketing mind. But in Venture Validator it was tricky because we were doing market research reports for very small companies, and we would tell them like, hey, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea, and a lot of the companies they had a bad idea or just didn't have enough traction. So we
Yeah.
would tell them like, hey, you should not continue. So we were kind of killing off our own business
Hmm.
in a way, right? Like we would be pitching, we'll validate your vision, but a lot of times we would say, yeah, no, it's we want to invalidate this. It's not a good idea. And so then
Yeah.
obviously they're not going to ever come back to us and re-up with us, right? Start a new project with us.
Got it.
And so that was really tricky to find a lot of new business that was not recurring whatsoever. And then
Uh-huh.
Coconut had pretty much the polar opposite business model, which very much excited us.
Yeah. So the two of you co-found, well, three of you, I guess, co-found Coconut. And so you went from intern with company one to being co-founder of company two. Did kind of the whole team go, or did you two just take off and do it?
Yeah, so Venture Validator, yeah, started as an unpaid intern, and then I actually did work my way up basically to co-founder in Venture Validator as well. So I had, a minor stake in the company, minor, equity holding in the company,
Okay.
and then so I was part of that sale, and then we started Coconut together. Eric and I are the original co-founders of Coconut as well, and so yes,
Mhm.
we did actually bring over a few of our virtual assistants from Venture Validator, but there weren't any other U.S. Um, people, with the company at the time. And then George, he's the new co-founder of Coconut. He came on just this past January.
Okay. And Coconut is super interesting. Do you want to explain for us what it does and why
Yeah,
why it's the Philippines?
yeah, definitely. So we maybe like all best startups, we kind of fell into it, and we're solving our own problems. So we used virtual assistants pretty heavily at Venture Validator, and we kind of stumbled into the Philippines. We just did our online research, found that they have really excellent English proficiency. They have fairly similar, I guess, culture to us. Like they have their own culture,
Yeah.
but they're also very familiar with ours. They watch a lot of the same Netflix shows, and they know all the slang that we use, all of those different little quirks. And so it was really easy to start working with them. And then, yeah, when we got into Coconut, we just already again kind of had our foot in the door and we were able to build a community from there. So yeah, that's kind of how we got kicked off with Coconut.
Okay. So in virtual assistants, if someone hasn't used them, you have someone, instead of hiring an American, which could be expensive, you have to provide benefits, maybe all these things.
Yep.
Instead, maybe you can pay someone kind of geo arbitrage, pay someone in another country to do things at a much lower rate, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so we are different than like a Fiverr, right? A Fiverr is more just
Mhm.
very much project based. What we do is long-term staffing. So we'll find somebody at an hourly rate and we'll staff them at your company for a long-term position. And then we'll just handle, like you said, kind of everything on the back end. We'll handle payroll, tax, compliance, legal, and even like HR, solving conflicts, anything like that. We provide that ongoing support there.
Yeah, and personally, I've tried, and I have outsourced things to the Philippines. I've tried doing it personally, like one-on-one versus
Yeah.
going through an agency.
Yeah.
Vastly different experiences. Why would people want to go through a company instead of just connecting with an individual?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I won't lie. It can definitely be cheaper to go by yourself,
Yeah.
just hire direct. But, obviously the value prop is that we have, for example, even for us at Coconut, we have a community of over 100,000 people now that we can post a job to, and we'll get, 300 to 500 applications the first day. And
Right.
a lot of people that we have a reputation now, in the Philippines,
Mhm.
and we provide benefits actually on our end to the VA. So that's not coming from the clients, but we just
Yeah.
kind of set the standard of what benefits we want to give to every single person that we staff. And so, yeah, we have a reputation. We have a lot of basically pipeline. And so that's the benefit is you could say, hey, I want an executive assistant. And then in 5 to 10 days, we will have, the best three candidates, just out there that we can
Mhm.
send to your inbox. You can interview them and then start working with that person. So it's really like speed. And of course, it's just taking a lot of work off of your plate to figure out, okay, how do I outsource? How do I actually find somebody that's good? How do I vet them? And then if they don't work out in the first month or two, now you have to start that whole process over again, or we could just find that replacement for you.
Yeah. Okay. And so before launching Coconut, I know you
Yeah.
had done market validation. Your prior company was a validation company, but what did
Right.
that look like? How was this? How did you know it was a good opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, it's called Venture Validator. So we would really work with the wow factor score. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the wow factor for this product or this business? And so, yeah, like you say, we tested, we did a lot of market research of our own and did that exact same survey structure for Coconut. And so we went out there and tried to figure out, hey, what could we change? Could we alter to this staffing agency model to get that score as high as we possibly can. And so, yeah, we kept tweaking it. Obviously, we could do it cheaper because it was just at cost for us. And we were able to use our own internal systems, own internal team. So we iterated, probably five major different changes to our business model before we landed on one that really scored highly. And we tested with at least 100 entrepreneurs every single time with pretty in-depth surveys. And then we would even do follow-up questions and, customer discovery surveys like live on Zoom. And yeah, like you say, we finally got to a business model that really scored high. I think it was a 7.8, maybe even 8 out of 10, which was incredibly high for all of the companies that we had previously surveyed for before.
Okay, super interesting. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked to Jun Bei, who's the CEO of Hollow AI, started that.
Uh-huh.
And same
Yeah.
deal, he went through 5 business models, said the exact same thing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. With your early models, so there's a lesson there. But with your
Yeah.
early models, what's something that you investigated that didn't work, that didn't make sense?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that actually it does work, but we've seen other companies do this, but we just did not like the idea of the one-time placement fee. So it was, a big
Mhm.
upfront chunk of money for somebody that we would just, find somebody for you and then be completely hands off. Because a lot of people that we interviewed with, it could just be a different subsection of the market. But the people that we
Mhm.
talked to is like they don't want to do a lot of that ongoing support. And so that was one of the key differentiators that we wanted to really focus on is like, hey, we find
Mhm.
somebody long term and we will stay there long term with you. Of course, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, month over month compared to just hiring direct, but there is value being given every month and also that security of if this VA leaves or if I need to find a different VA, it'll be incredibly easy just to use you guys instead of having to start that whole process over again. So yeah, that was one big business model change that we tested.
Okay, great. And so if you're explaining to an entrepreneur, lots of students are intimidated by launching companies because they feel like, oh, suddenly I'm going to be a boss. I'm going to be leading this organization with all these people. And it is simpler if you could outsource things. Like what's the selling point? Like how simple would it be for someone launching something new to use VAs to scale up?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, for quite a while, it was just Eric and myself, building a venture validator, doing a lot of those uh, market research reports purely, manually by ourselves
Yep.
for quite a while. And so that's what I would recommend is make sure that you actually have something good that people will pay for and that you can fulfill before ever hiring somebody or outsourcing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then yeah, I mean, for us, it took a while, like I said, before we hired our first hire. And now we even have, I think, 12 or 13 people on our internal team. But, that's after building now two companies and this one actually reaching I think we're at $3 million of ARR. So, annual recurring
Wow.
revenue. And so it takes a while to actually get to that point where you're going to be a boss of quite a few people. And then, yeah, like you said, like when do you start outsourcing? They're like I mentioned Fiverr earlier. I think Fiverr is honestly a
Mhm.
great place to start. If you're a young, scrappy entrepreneur and you do want to start delegating, but you don't have the budget or the runway, or if it just is stable business model, those project-based outsourcing options are going to be fantastic for you. Because yeah, sometimes we can't wear all the hats. If you need a video editor, for example, to help with social media, and you just that's not your skill set, it would be easier to pay somebody on Fiverr $40 and save your time for client facing time, right? So there are definitely ways that you can delegate without hiring somebody full time or even part time.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned $3 million of ARR, so that's a recurring subscription revenue, right? So
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
not you're not having to get new sales every year, so that's super
Right.
meaningful. The Okay, so what type of say someone tries out Fiverr a little bit, and then the
Mhm.
business is growing, and now they're thinking maybe I do need a VA, a virtual assistant. What types of tasks are best to outsource? What makes the most sense?
Yeah. It's really dependent on your skill set, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
for Eric especially, like I said, he's kind of that visionary mindset. So he needs somebody that is very detail oriented and very conscientious and more admin related. So, if it comes tax season, like Eric hates that. Like that is just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely his worst nightmare. But for me, like it's a fun time, like I enjoy looking back at all this financial data, right? And so the skill sets that you need are definitely dependent on your own skill set. Like I mentioned, the video editor, I hate doing that work. And so, yeah, if I'm starting to look for somebody to help me, what I'll do is I'll just go back, review my task list or my to-do list and say, hey, here's all of the tasks that are repeatable. I've been doing these for 6 months now, every single day. It takes an hour of my day, but it's not something that I need to do. And so that's the first place I would start is like, okay, is there enough work there that I could delegate and keep somebody busy? And of course, do you have the budget now to keep that person employed?
Yeah, and some entrepreneurs will say, "Well, just think of what an hour of your time is worth, and if
Right.
something's going to cost more than that to pay someone else to do, pay them to do it, right?"
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yep, exactly.
If you have a dedicated virtual assistant paying per hourly, whether it's through Coconut or someone else, like
Right.
what's a typical rate? What are you paying someone like that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, yeah, it totally depends on the role. But I would say for, a really amazing executive assistant, for example, you could pay
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour. And that'll get you an amazing executive assistant from the Philippines. And then also there's countries in South America, even Mexico. You could find somebody, that's very qualified that has a lot of experience at that hourly rate. You could find somebody.
Okay, great. And so you're working on both sides. You're providing the service to the customer, but you're also providing benefits, whatever else, for workers in the
Yeah.
Philippines. What is the experience like for them? Is this a good job, or is this kind of
Mhm.
what's it like?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And that's another huge area that we focused on in the beginning is like I said, we had a few VAs at Venture Validator. And so we did a lot of focus groups with them. And we also invited a lot of their virtual assistant friends to these focus groups. And we would basically ask like, okay, what do you hate about all the agencies you've worked for, right? Because some agencies have a terrible reputation and there's a lot of BPO companies that don't have the most glamorous jobs. They don't have great benefits. So we identified all of these things that the VAs really cared about. So very common in the Philippines is 13th month pay. You basically pay an extra month of salary at the end of the year. And it's a common practice in the Philippines, but a lot of US employers, especially if they're just hiring direct, they don't know that. It feels weird to them. Like it's just it's a quirk, in the Philippines that we're not used to. And so we knew that we had to do that. So even right now, we save up every single month so we can pay out that 13th month pay to all of our VAs. So we don't have our clients pay that. We just pay that out of our own pockets. So that's one little example of like, okay, we know that this is going to set us apart as a US based agency trying to employ people in the Philippines. And yeah, we've gotten amazing feedback. We do a quarterly NPS survey among our VAs, and we actually just hit our highest score, which is a 9.8 out of 10. But even from the beginning, it was 9.6, 9.7. And yeah, a lot of people say it's the best job that they've ever had. They have great employers, great clients because we do a lot of our own vetting and making sure that we have good people, get good employers, good clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also make sure that they're paid above average and they have a full range of benefits.
That's great. So, do you need to have people on the ground there, or is it the virtual assistants are over there, the company's over here?
Yeah, no, it's been totally remote. So even within the first, I think, 2 years of Coconut, neither Eric or I had ever been to the Philippines. And then even now, we've both been, I've been once, he's been twice, and George has been once as well. And so, yeah, for a lot of our US clients, I'd say 98% of them have never been to the Philippines. Yeah, you definitely don't need boots in the ground there. It's independent contractor relationships. You don't have to have an office there or office space or anything like that.
I was sure I was going to find out that either you or Eric had served a mission in the Philippines.
Right? That's
Turned out
what
not
pretty
to.
much anybody from Utah, any of our clients there, they always ask us that.
Yeah, yeah. There are some Tagalog speakers locally, but the
Yes. Yes.
well, great. So another question for automation. Say you're running a startup company. There's this issue of, do I outsource something, or could maybe AI do it at this point? Can I automate it some way?
Yeah.
How do you decide what's good for software and what's good for people?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of use cases you could dive into. I'd say like a good general rule of thumb is this a client-facing action or just an internal back-end operation? If it's something that's back-end, it's notifying an internal team member or launching any kind of automation like project management, for example. A lot of those, yeah, you could definitely try to automate those. If it's client-facing, we try not to do a ton of like automated or templatized emails. We want those touch points. So many people are diving into AI and automation. And so if you can maintain a lot of that client facing interaction where it still feels very personal and still feels very human, I think that's going to be a huge way to stick out, even now. So that's my general rule of thumb.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can definitely tell when text is coming from ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Anytime on LinkedIn, when someone's referring to esteemed colleagues or something like
Yes,
AI
exactly.
again. So
Yes.
we're good. So you guys, how long has Coconut been around?
3 years.
3 years. Okay, so you're into it. You have significant revenue. So how have you scaled up? What's that process been like?
Yeah, for us, it's definitely
Yeah,
been a mix of content marketing. So Eric and I, and now George, we've all been posting on LinkedIn, very, very consistently over the past probably 2 years. But yeah, even from the beginning, referrals is a huge, huge source of business for us. It's about 50% of all new business. That may be a little bit lower now that we're, seeking other ways of outreach and, throwing more events, doing more partnerships. But yeah, for sure. At the early days, it was a lot of even our venture validator clients, right? Like, hey, we helped you with this market research report. We noticed you're doing great. Is there any way we could help you? We've now opened Coconut. We have a staffing company. We could find a great executive assistant for you or customer service rep or whatever it might be. And then, making sure that you treat that client extremely well. And then that may turn into one or two referrals, which obviously is just going to exponentially grow your business.
Mhm. Yeah, and for what it's worth, I know I learned about you guys on LinkedIn from seeing your posts on there.
There you
So
go.
works, totally works.
It works.
And you have a presence on YouTube as well, so you're out there on social media platforms. That's good. In terms of your own outsourcing, either venture, what are some mistakes? What are some things you've seen go wrong in outsourcing, and how do you avoid those problems?
Yeah, two big things come to mind. One is that there are people that think of outsourcing and they think of saving money, which is very, very accurate. But unfortunately, people take another step and say, okay, I'm going to go to the very bottom of the barrel and say, I'm going to
Right.
save the most amount of money. And it's like, yeah, you can hire somebody for $4 an hour, but you still get what you pay for. And so you're not going to find the best talent. So that's one just thing that really hurts my soul is when people do
Mhm.
that, like, yo, I'm going to outsource and I had a terrible experience. It's okay. Well, you hired somebody for $4 an hour. Like, what did you expect to find? And like,
Right.
you're expecting them to do XYZ at some high level project, and that's just unrealistic. So that's one of the biggest issues I see with people outsourcing. But also more on like the internal side of it, I would say the other big issue is just making sure that you stay on top of it, stay on top of delegation, I would say. So even for me, like I'll start a new, or I'll find a new software, for example, or I'll find a new way to do something and I'll start doing it. I'll kind of pave the way, just like a lot of founders do. Like they're going to do something the first time, and figure out how that all works. But then you need to make sure that you separate yourself as soon as that is repeatable and that it can be handed off. Because I've had that many times where I just go by, 3 or 4 months without thinking about it. And now I'm working, 50, 60 hours a week on all of these admin tasks that I don't need to be working
Mhm.
on. But it was just me that figured out how to do it. And so I kind of like, oh, well, I'm the only one that can do it. I'll just keep doing it. So you kind of got to get rid of that ego and say, like, no, I am not the best person at that. Like, yeah, maybe I stumbled upon that, but now I can hand it off to somebody else.
Yeah, it does seem to me that business leadership is largely about nailing what works, trying stuff,
Yeah.
getting it to work, and then, like you say,
Exactly.
handing it off. But you've described yourself as kind of a detail guy, kind of an executor. So how do you make yourself step back and look at what you're doing and say, oh, that needs to go to someone else?
Yeah, like I said, I think for me it's just too many things get onto my plate. And so, yeah, maybe I am really good at XYZ process, but if I now have 10 things that I'm doing, every single day, then my effectiveness and just the quality of work is going to start to decrease. And so I think that's a really key indicator of, okay, I need to start delegating this because somebody else on the team, maybe they could get it to, 85% or 90% completion. Like, yeah, I can get it 95 to 100%, but it would be so much more effective, kind of going back to those hourly rates that we talked about earlier, for somebody else to get it up to 85, 90%. And then maybe I could spend a few minutes to touch things up or to refine something. Even LinkedIn recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been posting on my own LinkedIn for over 2 years now, and I just barely hired somebody to help me write LinkedIn posts. So I will say, hey, here's an idea for a post, and then they'll do the grunt work of drafting it up. And then I'll come back in and say, okay, that doesn't sound like me. Like, this is what I would actually add here. And so it's kind of cutting out the grunt work in the middle, and still maintaining that high quality of work.
Okay, great. Well, because of the two businesses you've done, you're very well equipped to kind of automate and outsource things. You could go the Tim Ferriss route and do less and less of the business's work, right? So
Yeah.
what is actually the future for you in Coconut? What do you have planned?
Yeah, and I kind of tried that out. I started heading that direction of,
Mhm.
yeah, like I have an amazing team. I know how to delegate. Like, let's start offloading all of these different things. But for me, I mean, this time of my life, I still have a lot of energy, a lot of ambition. Like, I'm not ready for that. Like, I could do that, but
Mhm.
like we've talked about, there is still a lot of value, like in the founder role of exploring new ways to do things, new processes, new markets, new ways to reach out to people. And so I really just get a lot of satisfaction from doing all of that novel work, kind of walking the path that nobody's walked yet, and then showing somebody else how to do that. I think that's still very fulfilling for me. And so, yeah, for the foreseeable future, I won't be doing the 4-hour work week.
Okay, well, sounds good. Okay, well, Tyler, we're just about out of time, but if someone wants to follow Coconut or connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, I'm in coconutva.com, and then also, Tyler Leber on LinkedIn. I've got a little coconut next to my name. That's how you can know it's me. And so, yeah, follow me on LinkedIn, DM me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk, happy to chat anytime.
Okay, and the company has a YouTube channel too, I think, right?
Yeah, we do. I think it's more VA facing.
Oh, okay.
A lot of, how to apply to Coconut VA, so that might not be as
Yeah.
applicable. But yeah, we
Okay,
are
but
on
if people in
YouTube.
the Philippines watching and interested, there you go.
Exactly. There you
So,
go.
okay, well, so great. Thanks for sharing your time with us, Tyler, and this is some great insight on outsourcing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.